These Roblox games may look innocent on the surface, but behind each one lies a dark story, and today we'll be discussing all of them. Starting off with 99 Nights in the Forest, a survival game inspired by a rescue mission named Operation Hope. 99 Nights in the Forest is a Roblox game created by the group Grandma's Favorite Games on March 4th, 2025. It quickly rose to fame on the platform, earning over 700 million visits and peaking at over 600,000 concurrent players. Right off the start, when players join the game, they are warned that the game is based on a true story, and that's not just for show. The inspiration behind the popular game took place in Colombia on May 1st, 2023, when a small plane carrying 7 passengers, including a mother and her 4 children, went missing in the Amazon rainforest. Tragically, the adults didn't survive, but the 4 children managed to stay alive for over 40 days, moving through the jungle, hiding from and surviving on wild fruits. A large-scale search operation called Operation Hope was launched, involving search dogs, helicopters, and indigenous trackers working with the Colombian military. Against all odds, the children were rescued. In 99 Nights in the Forest, this story is transformed into a survival horror experience. You're dropped into an isolated wilderness and must survive for 99 nights while searching for 4 missing children. But as you explore deeper into the forest, you begin to uncover things that don't belong. There are abandoned research sites, sealed off bunkers, and signs of strange experiments. Throughout the game, notes are scattered around, suggesting that a creature is haunting the woods. The deeper you go, the more unsettling the truth becomes. You'll find strange sights, symbols, and cultists wearing deer antlers, all pointing to the existence of a deer-like figure that seems to be watching your every move. Although the game never directly explains what the creature is, many players believe it's inspired by the Wendigo, a spirit from folklore known for its deer-like head and towering human-shaped body. In the game, the monster is believed to be the result of experiments conducted by the cultists themselves before they lost their minds and began worshipping the very creature they created. The true origin of the deer remains uncertain, although the forest offers hints, scattered journals, abandoned research sites, and strange symbols, but never a clear answer. Its story remains buried, and perhaps we may never know. The forest hides its secrets well, but in our next game, there's no forest to run to, only snow and the will to survive. And this is Survive Flight 871. Survive Flight 871 is a Roblox game created by Lilman and Real on March 27th, 2024. With over 53 million visits and 245,000 favorites, it places players in the aftermath of a plane crash in a frozen wasteland, where the goal is to survive against all odds. When players join the game, they begin at the front of an airport terminal where they must check in and board their flight. In the middle of the flight, the plane spirals out of control and crashed into a frozen wasteland where players wake up cold, confused, and surrounded by debris. From there, your only goal is to survive. The game's concept is loosely inspired by the real-life crash of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, also known as the Andes flight disaster. On October of 1972, a chartered aircraft carrying 45 people, including a rugby team, crashed into the Andes Mountains. The survivors endured extreme cold, avalanches, and isolation. After 72 days of hardship, only 16 were rescued. Survive Flight 871 takes that premise and blends it with Roblox's gameplay mechanics. Players must gather wood, craft fires, build shelters, and find food in the harsh environment. The game has a survival system where players must regulate their hunger, temperature, and thirst bars to survive. Players could craft weapons and even tame animals to increase their chances. Eventually, if you survive long enough and collect the right materials, you'll be able to call for a rescue helicopter. If successful, it marks your escape and victory from the frozen wasteland. Survive Flight 871 takes its inspirations from a real story of human perseverance, but not all survival tales are about mountains or forests. Sometimes it's all in the mind. Our next game trades the outside world for basement walls and poses a single question: what happens when your world is just a room? This is My Eyes Deceive. My Eyes Deceive is a now banned Roblox game that gained attention for its dark and uncanny storytelling. The original version of the game was created by an indie developer, Dev, and first released on itch.io. He would later meet one of the developers of the Roblox group Cheeseblocks, who asked him if they could recreate it in Roblox, a request that Dev would end up agreeing to. The Roblox remake of the game quickly blew up, attracting the attention of of several YouTubers and content creators, and launching a much broader fanbase around the game. But as it grew in popularity, the original was often left out of the conversation. This led Nui Dev to request its takedown, not because of its content, but out of concern that his original work was being overshadowed. At the very beginning, the game displays a warning which states that the experience contains sensitive and disturbing subject matters, ending with a reminder, do not take this lightly, reinforcing the seriousness of the game. The game places you in the shoes of a young child, sheltered from a world supposedly destroyed by a deadly virus. Each day, you would wake up in a windowless and cramped basement, following a routine. Take your pills, eat the food, water the plants, and wait for your father to return. As the days pass, your dreams become more and more unsettling, and you begin to question everything. Why can't you leave? Why doesn't the child know what an apple is? Why does the father never show his face? By the end of day 6, after the father's sudden disappearance, you're faced with a crucial choice. Continue the so-called antidote or stop. This decision leads to 2 very different endings. If you stop, the child lies about taking the antidote when the father returns. That night, footsteps approach and a voice asks if the child is awake, followed by a chilling, "Alright, let's get to," before being interrupted by a doorbell. The voice panics and rushes upstairs while muttering, "They shouldn't be here." The child wakes up noticing that the door was left open. Upstairs on the table, a pharmacy receipt for sleeping pills catches your eye. Next to it, a bulletin board with a police report detailing a spontaneous house inspection, noting, "No substantial evidence was found. The case was closed." The child sees the sun, softly asking, "What is that glowing ball up there? And why does it hurt my eyes?" Where then the screen fades to black and the game ends. But if you continue taking the pills, the days blur together. Eventually, when the father opens the basement door, everything fades to black, where she asks one final haunting question, which marks the ending of the game. With such a dark story, there had to be an inspiration for it. Many players believed it had to be inspired by real-life events, one being pointed to a real and deeply disturbing case involving long-term basement captivity by a parent, a case that shocked the world. And while the similarities are hard to ignore, the developer clarified that the story of My Eyes Deceive was actually inspired by a 2-sentence horror story from Reddit. "All my life, my parents have told me not to open the basement door, but I got curious and disobeyed them. What is that glowing ball in the sky, and why does it hurt my eyes?" However, it's not entirely a coincidence. The layout of the in-game basement was visually based on that infamous case's real-life cellar, grounding the horror in unsettling realism. While the plot is fictional, the emotional weight it carries still feels all too real. My Eyes Deceive shows us that not all horror comes from monsters. Sometimes it comes from truths that are kept from us. But the next game dives into fears born from folklore, an urban legend brought to life in Roblox. Before we continue with the rest of the video, I just wanted to say that my goal is to hit 90,000 subscribers by the end of this month, and it would help a lot if you could subscribe. The Paranoia is a psychological horror game created by Tran Nguyen Lam on August 2nd, 2024. Despite having flown under the radar for most players, it has built a small following with close to 800,000 visits. The Paranoia places you in the role of Nia, a man barely alive in a hospital. 2 doctors surround you, trying to save you, but everything fades to black. The next thing you know is you awaken at home, receiving a call from a character called Trang, asking you to visit her at the motel. Before leaving, you speak with your mother, who asks you to buy her some salt. But what follows next is a string of strange events, finding your mother praying to a picture while a dark figure reaches toward her from the shadows, and people are suddenly choked by something unseen. You are then thrown into a surreal, dreamlike world where the only way out is finding a ringing phone. The motel isn't any safer. As its power is cut, the same dark figure begins to roam the halls. You are now tasked with restoring the electricity while avoiding whatever it is that's stalking you. Once you manage to turn the power back on, you have one final task to do. Light 3 incenses and 8 candles scattered throughout the building. When the last one is lit, everything fades to black and you hear the voice of one of the doctors for a final time. "Sir, the patient stopped breathing." The Paranoia draws its inspirations from the developer's home country, Vietnam, particularly Vietnamese spiritual beliefs surrounding death. The presence of incense, ghost-like figures, and dreamlike visions reflect rituals often associated with mourning or unresolved souls. And while the developer hasn't confirmed a specific story it was based on, users from Reddit stated that the story takes place in mid-90s to early 2000s Saigon, Vietnam. Now, the main backstory is very hard to know exactly because, frankly, there are many cases like this in Vietnam. This is more considered as an urban legend, where in Vietnamese there is a belief that if a soul passes away not peacefully, it will haunt the same place they pass away. pray and not descend to heaven. Most of the time, the family will call an exorcist, but in this case, they light incense instead as a way to relieve the soul. In the game, the owner of the motel mentions that Trang, the person who you were supposed to visit, had actually passed away days ago, and it implied that her spirit is the one stalking you throughout the entire game. The Paranoia stood out for its cultural depth and unsettling tone, but not all Roblox games aim for subtle horror, because some dive headfirst into controversy, and only a few caused as much alarm as the now deleted experience known simply as Carbine. Carbine was a short-lived and highly controversial Roblox game, developed by a group known as Active Shooter Studios, who created real-life locations with unsettling accuracy, and the game was quietly uploaded, quickly attracting attention for its disturbing subject matter and setting. When entering the game, players enter a detailed weapon selection menu with the option to choose from primaries, secondaries, explosives, and other arms before picking a character, with some being modeled after real-world criminals. Once ready, you spawn in front of a recreated school building with uncanny accuracy to a similar one tied to a historic tragedy from the late 1990s. The layout, hallways, and overall structure were so precise that many players immediately recognized what it was referencing, even without a name being mentioned. From there, the gameplay involved quote-unquote interacting with NPCs who reacted in unsettling ways. Some would hide, while others would fall, and the game featured graphic effects like blood and damage. Eventually, signaled by a text on top of the screen, law enforcement NPCs arrive, with players being given a disturbing prompt. These games weren't a coincidence. It was coordinated through private Roblox servers and Discord channels to develop and distribute their content. These underground communities grew quietly, spreading their influence, with many being part of a larger true crime community subculture, whose members began idolizing real-world criminals and discussing details of past tragedies, not out of awareness, but of admiration. Carbine's origins stemmed from a community obsessed with reenacting real-world violence. But while that game focused on criminal acts from the past, our next game shifts to something far bigger: war itself. Entrenched is a Roblox game created by the group EDOT on August 8th, 2019, with close to 144 million visits and over 1 million favorites. It's one of the most well-known World War I themed trench warfare games on Roblox. The game throws players directly into the grim reality of trench warfare. Upon joining, you select from 9 different classes, ranging from frontline riflemen to support roles like medics and engineers. The game takes place between the Entente and Central Powers, across the muddy trenches and war-torn fields loosely inspired by real battles from World War I. The player's goal is to capture objectives on the map, which players vote on before each match begins. Maps like Verdun, the Somme, and Tannenberg aren't just backdrops, they're reflections of events that shaped history, Verdun being one of the longest battles, the Somme as the symbol of war's heavy toll, while Tannenberg marked a significant early conflict between the two major powers that the game is based off. Each battlefield in Entrenched isn't just chosen randomly, all of them represent a deep piece of our history. Entrenched may be a game, but it doesn't shy away from the sobering nature of the war that it is loosely inspired by. In a similar way, the next game is equally etched in history, known as The Voyage that turned into an event that shook the world. Roblox Titanic is a game developed by Virtual Valley Games, being released on September 6th, 2015. The game since then has gained close to 327 million visits and almost 1.2 million favorites. Despite being nearly a decade old, it continues to receive updates, with the latest one being on June 24th, 2025. The game places you aboard a highly detailed recreation of the famed Titanic just before its infamous voyage, and you're free to explore the ship in its full glory, from the grand staircase to the reception room, the bridge, the engine rooms, the deck, and the dozens of passenger spaces. The freedom the game provides is what makes the experience so impactful. You're not locked into a mission or a specific path. Whether you choose to explore the ship's luxury suites, attempt to delay the disaster, help others, or simply stand on the deck and wait for the inevitable, the choice is all yours. As the game's title suggests, its inspiration is from how it mirrors the historical event. The game recreates the final hours of the Titanic with attention to detail, from the moment of impact with the iceberg to the gradual flooding of the ship, the collapse of the funnel, and even the ship breaking in two. It perfectly recreates it, showing the most widely accepted accounts of the tragedy. The actual Titanic sank on April 15th, 1912, and remains one of the most infamous maritime disasters in history, claiming many lives, and the game captures this experience as a somber reenactment. And while no game can truly convey the depth of what happened that night, Roblox Titanic offers players a chance to experience it, not just of survival, but of remembrance. It stands as a tribute to those who were tragically aboard in one of history's most infamous voyages, and a journey that they never returned from.